Hey everyone, another happy Monday, hopefully. Uh, Even if it's not a happy Monday, fine, join it. I know Mondays can be hard. You just come off the weekend, but God's with you. Everything will be alright. Unless it's already alright, then great. I'm just going to spin myself into a circle right now. I digress. So, to get right into verses. So, we're still in the book of Ezra, obviously, for the three of you that are aware of that. Or to the thousands of you. Who really knows? I assume there's 1,000 people that look at one screen, so when it shows one view on YouTube, it actually means 1,000 people have seen it. And I live by that, and that's what that's where my hope comes from. I'm kidding. So, in the book of Ezra, last week we had talked about how the Israelites are back in Israel, kind of their native land. They're building up the temple, everything's great. But the people that lived there already kind of came in and, with nefarious purposes, wanted to help and kind of lay claim to what the Israelites had and what the king had given them. And I talked about, kind of not letting the world come in and kind of corrupt what God's will has placed on your heart. And now we'll get into kind of another tangential similar thing. But basically, the last verse that we ended on was verse 3, and that was basically the leaders of the Jewish people saying to the people around them that were offering to come in and kind of do stuff. Like, no, we got this, we're going to build the temple of God, just as King Cyrus had told us to. We're just going to stick to that. So the verse I posted in the verse of the day was Ezra 4:11 through 16, but I've actually tricked you, and I'm going to jump back to verse 4, as I just said. The last verse we read was 3. But mostly because, for one, if you are going to read the verses on the verse of the day, I don't think you just want, like, a brick of text that's, like, 4 paragraphs long. I'm not trying to make you guys read essays from the Bible. But, so what happens, the Israelites tell the people around them, no, we're going to do this on our own, as the king of Persia commanded us. So verse 4. Then the people around them set out to discourage the people of Judah and make them afraid to go on building. They bribed the officials to work against them and frustrate their plans during the entire reign of Cyrus, king of Persia, and down to the reign of Darius, king of Persia. I'm not sure how many there were in between that. So that's what happened, and then we're going to now find out kind of what they did to start bringing up trouble. So, at the beginning of the reign of Xerxes, I'm not sure which Xerxes. I know there's the famous one, if we've all seen the 300 movie. But there's probably multiple ones. But basically, the verses 7 through 10 is basically a kind of list of, and these people are going to write a letter to Xerxes, and these people are also writing that letter, and it's kind of like, it's listing all the people who are chipping in to write this letter to Xerxes, or to Artaxerxes. I'm not sure if that's the same person or if that's the same person. Like in verse 6, it says the reign of Xerxes, and 7, it's King Artaxerxes. So maybe it's the same, or Xerxes is a last name, maybe. These are the things that a prepared person would have looked up ahead of time. But we're all casual here, keeping it cash, So the letter. Starting at verse 11. To King Artaxerxes, from your servants in Trans-Euphrates. Your version may have something different. This is NIV, I believe. The king should know that the people who came up to us from you have gone to Jerusalem and are rebuilding that rebellious and wicked city. They are restoring the walls and repairing the foundations. Furthermore, the king should know that if this city is built and its walls are restored, no more taxes, tribute, or duty will be paid, and eventually the royal revenues will suffer. Now, since we are under obligation to the palace, and it is not proper for us to see the king dishonored, we are sending this message to inform the king, so that a search may be made in the archives of your predecessors. In these records you will find that this city is a rebellious city, troublesome to kings and provinces, a place with a long history of sedition. That is why the city was destroyed. We inform the king that if this city is built and its walls are restored, you will be left with nothing in Trans-Euphrates, which is just the region that they're in. So, what are we getting at in this? Story-wise, it's kind of progression of, the people that lived there wanted to kind of force the Israelites to kind of mesh in with them, because the Israelites are historically kind of like to themselves. They're God's people. They see themselves as that, and they're called to be set apart. So they don't. You see throughout the Old Testament, God's telling them like not to intermix with some of the neighboring people, to kind of stay as Israelites, and that's not as far as like making converts. It's more the idea of, and this is just how I interpret it. It's the idea that if you're going to bring someone in, they're always going to bring something of them, like religiously or practice, and they're going to draw you away from that, or draw you away from kind of your devotion to God. So that's why they don't mix. They kind of keep themselves together for God. So these people around want them to mix in. They don't want this kind of powerful unit of a group. They want to break that up, intermix, and just kind of have them be like everyone else. They don't want to do that, the Israelites. So now that these neighboring people can't get their way, they're going to kind of try to jumble up the plans. And next week, we'll see what the king's reply is, and we'll continue the story. But kind of what do I want to talk about this now that we're 7 minutes into the video? What's the point? So last week I talked about how you don't want to let the kind of worldly influences come in and alter what God's will has for your life. And this kind of goes along with that. The world, it's not just that anything separate from God is bad. I think I gave, it was last week or maybe the week before, about when you have a plane or a ship and you have like a degree off, they end up like hundreds of miles apart eventually. And that's if you're just kind of marginally off. But you'll find that just as the world kind of rejected Jesus, and you see the early church being attacked for them preaching God's name, sometimes things are just going to come against you. It's not always just distractions taking away from God. Sometimes things are going to just like stress with school, stress with family, relationships. Things are going to try and actually take you away from God. And in those times is when we really need to lean in and trust God. Because, I mean, from an outside perspective, it seems like, oh, all these neighboring people, they've called the king, who maybe he's going to bring armies now. And what would the Israelites do against that? If they don't trust in God, it could be very scary. You see throughout the Old Testament, I mean, what we just talked through on Wednesday nights in Judges with Deborah. Barak, who's the other general, not other general, he is the general. But Deborah comes and says, hey, we're going to fight all these enemies. We only have this many people, but we're going to go fight them. And Barak doesn't think they can do it. But he eventually kind of comes to terms, Deborah helps lead, and they overcome it. Because time and time again, in the Old Testament and in the New Testament, things come up against God, whether they're people, spiritual, and God always triumphs. The world thought they killed Jesus. Satan probably thought he won in that moment, but he rose from the dead. He defeated death itself. And, I mean, if he can defeat death itself, what do we have to fear that he can't handle, or that he can't take care of? So, really just I want to wrap it up in the bow of, as the world is coming against you, if you feel small, if you feel insignificant, if you feel like walls or things are closing in around you and they're trying to get you to turn away from God or just kind of, I don't do anything that's against God. Trust that God is with you and the God who rose Jesus from the grave, the God who created the universe, is on your side. And if he, I mean, walls closing in or anything that this world can throw at you is literally nothing. Not to overuse the word literally. I know people say figuratively and whatnot. But literally, it can't overcome God. Like, you have nothing to worry about. And there's, I think, so much peace and comfort in that because God has chosen us and he's on our side. He's on our team. And what is there to fear? So I hope that encourages some of you. If you've made it all 11 minutes in the video and you did 5 minutes and leave when I was just going to still rambling. But, I feel like I'm keeping it light, keeping it fun. So I hope you guys all just have a good week. God bless.